Hi, Paul Whelan here from Brick Lane Radio and East Recordings. I also produce under the name Pablo Del Monte, and today I'm going to take you through a 1-hour tutorial around the creative aspects of writing deep house music. I'll cover a few technical topics like compression and EQ, but primarily I'll be talking about song starting ideas, because I think that's the more difficult part, and there are loaded tutorials on YouTube around the technical components already. And what I'll do, it'll be a 3-part series. At the end, I'll make the Logic project, I'll be working predominantly in Logic. I'll make the project available for people to download. I'll be using purely native Logic plugins, so there won't be any compatibility issues, and I will probably rewire Ableton into Logic at one point. And if you sign up to our label's newsletter, then in that monthly newsletter there will be a download link to a load of freebies such as this tutorial and DJ mixes and lots of other giveaways. I promise I won't bombard you with a lot of newsletters, so it'll be a monthly newsletter. And the other promotion, if I may, before I get going, is to mention Brick Lane Radio, our radio station. We're always on the lookout for good DJs, so if you want to DJ, contact me through the contact form on the East Recordings website and send me a link to one of your mixes so I can check it out. So lots of different ways you can start an idea. It's quite intimidating looking at a blank project. So I say take a lot of that pressure off yourself and use a couple of techniques to get you going. The one I'm going to cover today is importing a commercial release into the project and using that as a basis to get your ideas going. Sampling elements if you want to, or trying to work out the parts of it played, or even deriving MIDI from elements of it too. Other ideas you could try are, basing your productions around sample packs, jamming out 3 or 4 ideas quite quickly and then picking the one idea that's the strongest from the session, collaborating with other people and so forth. But yeah, as I mentioned, the idea I'm going to use today is to take a commercial release and use it to get my ideas. So I'm actually going to do something a little bit artificial in that I'm going to take one of my own releases, because I don't want to breach any copyright laws with regard to YouTube. So if I used another person's track, then the video will probably get blocked. So I'm going to bring in a track called Feeling into Logic. It's coming out on East Recordings in a couple of months' time. And so for the sake of the video, you're going to pretend that we're using a different track than one of my own. Okay, dropped it into Logic there, and I happen to know the tempo of the track because I wrote it, and it's 124 beats per minute. Bring the volume down and type in the tempo here, 124. And let's give the track a quick listen so you can get a feel for it. I won't go through the whole thing. I'll play you the intro, the drop, and the breakdown. Okay, here we go. Introduction. And now I'll play with the beat coming in. The drop. And now I'll bring you into the breakdown. No, the drop proper actually. Now the breakdown. That bass line I like. So what I'm going to do is, I know that at the end of the track there is a part with the bass line playing only. So I'm going to sample that. I'll play it to you briefly now. So I'm going to cut a 4-bar audio loop. And I'm going to put that onto a new audio track. Now, many of you will be familiar with the audio, the melody and harmony to MIDI function in Ableton. But maybe you're not that familiar with the Logic equivalent of it. So we've got a 4-bar loop here, and let's make that 4 bars. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Flex Time in Logic, which you would normally use for time stretching, and the flex pitch function you would normally use for tuning vocals, like you would in Melodyne or Wave Tune. And as you can see, it's done a pretty good job here of identifying the notes in the bass line. There they are. Now, if you go up to Edit here and go down to Create MIDI track from Flex Data, boom, there you go. You've got the MIDI data now on a piano track, admittedly, which will change. And Logic has done a pretty damn good job of working out the bass line. So I'm going to swap over the piano for a retro synth, and I shall pull up a bass patch in a moment. There's one in here that I created the other day. I think I'll use, as it will be appropriate for deep house. Yeah, it's a bit low. I'm going to take that up an octave. And yeah, let's have a little look at the MIDI data. That blip there, or those blips, is actually an artifact. They're not in the original bass line, but I think I'll hold on to them. I quite like them. Okay, should we try quantizing it a little bit? Oh no, I don't like that at all. And let's try a setting with more swing on it. Yeah, I don't like that either at all. Actually, I'm going to take the quantizer off. I think, yeah, that didn't work either. Okay, yeah, I'll take it off. Okay, I shall try changing the key of the track. So in the scale quantized section here, I'm going to put on to natural minor. The original track is either in A flat or D flat, so I'm going to try another flat scale and we'll try a few out. Okay, you try another. and another. Okay, maybe we'll go with the D flat actually. Yeah. But it's a really handy function in Logic 10. Okay, how about we get those blips actually, and I'll put them onto a no, let's get a drum beat going together. Let's get a basic house beat going. Got Ultra Beat here, and I gotta go for, I think, the Deep House kit. I normally would go for Machine here, but I want to not use third-party plugins. Okay, very standard house beat. Got an 808 kick drum. Hat on the third division between every kick drum. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to put those blips onto another channel, instrument channel, so I can use a different synth to play them rather than to have them in the bass line. I'm going to take them out of the bass line. And I'll come back to that later. Back to the drum beat for now. Not really feeling that hat there, so I think I'm going to audition a few more and see if we can come up with a better one. And there's a really cool function in Ultra Beat where you can have the drum machine playing and audition samples as you go. So I'm initializing the slot there where the sample is loaded into, and now I'm going to replace it with one of my own, and I've ticked the preview tick box there. I'm going to now navigate to my sample folder on an external hard drive where I have got my own samples, various different things, drums in particular, that I collected over time. And I'm going to navigate to the hat folder and try out a couple. Yeah, I need to play the track in Logic first. Quite like that. But let's go back to the load sample function and see if we can come up with a better one. Like that. Really like that one. I'm going to go with that one. A bit too much decay on it actually. So I'm going to go to the envelope here and shorten that. The fourth envelope in Ultra Beat is dedicated to the amp envelope. Now, to get that really kind of shuffling house open hat feel, it'd be really cool to automate the decay time to get a bit of movement into it. Now, one quick way of doing that would be to do it via smart controls and to assign the decay parameter to a smart control. But I say that, and actually Ultra Beat is unusual in terms of smart controls, in that it comes already with a dedicated pre-mapped device. So I'm going to try anyway and hit the learn button and see if I can assign it. Oh yeah, I can see what's happened. It's assigned it as an on-off function, which isn't ideal actually. I'd rather have had control over the decay time. But anyway, I'm going to, for the sake of time, roll with that for the moment. And yeah, I'm going to record that, the automation in. I'm with the 10.1.1 update, so I'm still getting my head around the new automation method, but yeah, let's try recording that in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on and off the decay to give movement to the hi-hat pattern. Yeah, foolish me, I forgot. I should have put the automation into touch mode before I did that. So I'm going to have to do that again. I think what will work will be a different thing. If on the fourth open hat, the bar, I pull the decay back. Okay, now that should have worked. And if I open up the automation lane in Logic, now Ultrabeat has automation lanes dedicated to each of the 24 or whatever samples that you can load into it. So I think I may have to find out the lane grid, which is 20, 21. Nope, not there. Yeah. Okay, I can find it down here, cool. Tidy up the automation a little bit. Turn off the automation lane. And don't forget to put automation back into touch mode, read mode, I should say. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to open up a multi-output version of Ultrabeat. So I'm going to have each drum sound coming out its own channel in the mixer by hitting the small X button in the channel strip. And then allocating the output channel in the relevant section in Ultrabeat. Yeah, I'm not keen on that particular pattern, and I've put in an additional pattern which I didn't want it. What I want to do is put a clap and a snare on the 2 and 4 beat. Not that. Yeah, I quite like that, but I think we can do better. Again, let's go back to our sample auditioning function. Better. Yeah, I like that one. And we'll load that up. And let's layer it up with a snare below it. And again, we're going to audition my sample library. Now, I normally use Audio Finder actually for this because it's really good at detecting the pitch of every sample. So Audio Finder is a program for storing your samples. So what I do is when I save a sample that I like, I record the pitch, which can come in handy for tuning later, which I'll show you in a moment. Okay, let's try and find a snare we like. I'm looking for a pitched one. Yeah, like that, like that. It's got a real discernible pitch to it. I'll have to decay a little bit. Tune it. Now, going back to Audio Finder, which I mentioned earlier, and the fact that I record the pitch of every sample that I take, watch what will happen here when I tune the snare to the key of the track. Yeah. There we go. Much better. Put that out. It's on output 2, and that one too. I'm going to have to do a bit of gain staging in the moment because I'm running into the red everywhere, but yeah. Let me focus on the drum beat to begin with. Okay, focus on our kick drum to begin with. I'm going to solo that in ultra beat. I'm going to bring down the volume fader. And bring in the snare drum. It's way too loud. And the clap. Make that clap a bit longer. And now the open hat, way too loud. Add a little bit of swing into the beat. Now the bass line. I'm going to try bringing that up an octave for a moment. Don't know why it went down actually. I had it at a higher octave, but it dropped for some reason. Still a little bit static in the movement. I think we shall have a look at that. Take a look at one bar to begin with. And then you get 3 repeats of that pattern. So I'm just going to copy them over. And then you go to variation at the end. And I'm going to glue them back together again. Have a little look at the end part. Note placement and length are really important in bass lines. Okay, much better. Now I can try my quantize and see if they work a bit better. Let's try 16C, which is MPC 60%. Now that note there is a problem when I add a swing to it. Better. Cool. Okay, we can tweak it again later if needed. Let's go back to our drum beat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to match the swing in the bass line with the drum beat. So I'm going to turn it up to 60%. And you can really hear that catching the fourth open hat in the bar, the one that we've got the decay shortened on. Swing affects every other beat in a 16th note pattern, although we've got an 8th note pattern here, but okay, let's have a look at our bass line a bit. Do you remember when we derived the MIDI from the audiophile sample and then Logic created a piano instrument? Well, it added 2 reverbs, a room and a hall onto that. The room I can live with on the bass line, the hall would be a problem, so let's turn that off. But the room reverb on a deep house bass line can work really well, actually. Not with a chorus, so I'll turn that off. And I'm going to put the EQ first, and I'm going to cut off the input into the reverb unit. I'm going to cut off around 100 on the low pass. Turn up the reverb too much to begin with. I'll turn it down in a moment. Yeah, take the low cut up to about 100. You'll have phase problems if you have the reverb on the lower part of the bass line. And then I'm going to open up the reverb unit, Logic Space Designer, and try and fill in that gap there between the notes at the end of the bass line with a longer decay time. But first of all, I'm going to set the pre-delay time. The pre-delay is the time between the dry signal coming through and the reverb happening. And I'm going to calculate that mathematically. There are 60,000 milliseconds in 1 minute. Therefore, if I divide that by the track tempo, 124, that will give you the number of milliseconds in 1 beat. And then you can keep on dividing that by 4 divisions of 4 to find a time, a pre-delay time that'll work for you. For a short room reverb, I want a short pre-delay, so 30 is good, but I think I'll divide it by 2 and make it 15. Now, ideally, I would like to have a longer decay time, but because the reverb unit is an impulse response based on you are stuck with a sample in loaded, so I'm going to try a different patch. Go to a room a bit longer, find one that we like, take the dry down and the wet all the way up. Give it a little bit more reverb to begin so we can hear what we're doing. Put the pre-delay back in. And play with the envelope for the decay time. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, come back, dial the reverb back down to a more acceptable level. Let's have a look at the EQ on the bass line. I have a fair linear phase EQ with bass lines and kick drums, so I'm going to swap that over. And take the low cut down to about 20. And then put a low shelf in to give it a bit more bottom end. Take out a little bit of the mid-range. And give it a little bit more top, have it cut through the mix on the laptop in particular. Without. With. Now it's going to do a little bit of metering here to check the very, very low end. There's a fair amount of sub bass in there actually. One option would be to put that up an octave, make it a mid-range bass line, and then to put another instrument below it, copy the data down, bring it down an octave or two, and load up a sub bass patch, and then to cut out the very low end of the bass line. But actually, because there's ample sub in there, I think I'll leave that be for the moment and bring it back down an octave to where we had it before. Let's have a quick look at that blip. Let's load up a nasty type sound. I'm going to use ES1 for that. And the patch, I think I've got it in here already. Yeah, cool. Let's have a look at the note placement. Put it on the beat. Get rid of that aberrant beat note. Put a little bit of echo, delay. Put the filter up on the echo. And bring the repeat time down a bit. Try it on a different mode. No, I don't like that. Maybe two of them. Yeah, I'm not in love with that. I'll come back to it in a later point. But I'm trying to fill that gap there in the bass line. And yeah, we're still running into the red. But don't worry about that for the moment. Logic, unlike Ableton's, got a huge leeway for that. Okay, I'm going to get Ableton in now. So I'm going to set up an extra auxiliary channel, go to edit and then create new auxiliary channel, set that input to Ableton, and then actually I have Ableton open already in rewire mode. So the important thing is that you open Logic first, then Ableton. And that way Ableton will become the rewire slave and come into Logic okay. The other thing to mention is that you have to be using the 64-bit version of Ableton, because Logic is 64-bit, and therefore it won't work with the 32-bit version of Ableton. And one annoying thing is you can't use third-party plugins in Ableton when you have it in rewire mode, but we're not going to do that today anyway. I prefer the warping algorithm in Ableton compared to Logic's flex time. It means that you can play audition samples much more quickly than if you were using, for example, Apple loops in Logic, where you've got a delay of about a second before they start playing. In Ableton, they're pretty much, they play in real time. Okay, let's try and find a loop, a top loop that we like. Yeah, I really don't like that at all. I have a pack here from Loop Masters that I really like. I think, yeah, it's Loop Masters. It's by Leftwing and Cody. Let's go to their top loop section and try out a few. Like that. I'm going to put it over here. That one too. Like that one. Like that one too. Okay, let's try them out now properly. A lot of reverb on that. Not that one. I think I'll go with that one. Yeah, like that one too, but a lot of reverb on it again. Yeah, I think that'll be the one I'll go for. Yeah, just looking at where they hit the slide, they're pretty much on the beat. I'm going to try a few different quantize settings out in Ableton. They actually have the Logic quantize settings in here, but I'm going to go with the MPC, load up a few of them, maybe 54, 58 and 60% swing. And put the pre-quantize on, so it'll quantize the beat based on the warp markers and then apply the swing setting. And yeah, try a few of them out here. Yeah, I like that. Gonna commit. In reality, I should have gone in and set the warp markers myself, because you can do it much more accurately than Ableton will. But anyway, I'm going to record the output of the rewire channel into an audio channel. I use Bus 40 for this. Randomly, it could be anything, couldn't it? Bus 40 is high enough that I never actually get around to creating any send channels on Bus 40. So record enable and hit play, or hit record. And there you go, got your top loop. Put that on a new audio track. Okay, so I want to bring another loop in later. And for the moment, I'm going to mute the rewire channel. And the volume down a tiny bit. And roll off the low end. same with the top end. Take a bit of the mid out. Great. Okay, I think it's going to check the EQ without the track playing, but that said, it's actually a better way to EQ while you have the track playing. Add a little bit of reverb, a bit of room. I'll add room reverb to every track in the project apart from the kick drum. So our snare and clap channel, I'm going to add a bit of reverb to that too, room reverb. And to the open hat. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm hearing that clap in there loud enough. Let me have a little look. Yeah, let me put the volume on the clap up a bit. Yeah, look at that kick drum there. It's not in mono, which you want your kick drum to be in. So I'm going to put the utility plug-in on it and make that into mono. Great. Yeah, let's add a little bit of let's check the pitch of it, I think. One quick way of doing it is adding Logic's version of Auto-Tune onto the channel. It's often really accurate. So it's looking like the sub-component of the kick drum is in E, maybe in E flat. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to verify that pitch against the program I told you about earlier, Audio Finder, which has a pitch analysis program built into it. So I just need to find the sample on my hard drive, and then I am going to navigate to that in Audio Finder, and then check the pitch in there. And my hunch is it will be in E, like Logic's Auto-Tune says. It's really it's a sub-component of the kick drum that you're worried about. Obviously the attack, which is a very fast pitch envelope going down, that bit of the pitch you're not worried about. Okay, pitch analyzer in E, yeah, perfect. So we're in E flat, I think I said. So if I bring the pitch down by a semitone, then the subby decay part of the kick will be in tune with the bass line. Add a little EQ. I'm going to add a bit of top to it because it's a 808 kick drum and it hasn't got much of a top to it. We'll work on this later in a further tutorial, but just at the moment that'll do. You want a bit more top for it to cut through on through the mix. Let's tidy up that note there. Still a little bit static, the end phrase. I'm just going to change the swing setting to 16A, which is, I think, MPC 54%. So everything else on the track will be at Logic 16C, i.e. MPC 60, but I'm going to have the bass line at 54%. Yeah, I still can't really hear that kick properly. Yeah, I think I'm going to sidechain the bass line in a moment. Try opening the filter up a little bit. Still think the bass is also a little bit weak. Okay, I need to create a side chain for the bass. So I'm going to record back into my Bus 40 out of the kick channel. There we go, only need one bar. Put the output back of the kick channel and put the side channel to a new track with no output. And then if I use the looping function in Logic, it'll loop out throughout the whole of the track, all of the arrangement. And that way I can now hide the track and not to have to worry about it again. Now if I get the bass line up, and if I put a compressor in after the EQ, although I could put it before the EQ because it's a sidechain compressor, not a general compressor. You got all these wonderful new compressors in Logic 10.1.1, but for sidechaining I go for the digital reverb, the platinum reverb. Set the input to the sidechain channel. And a bit like with the pre-delay, I'm going to use tempos for attack and decay that work with the track tempo. If I recall, the pre-delay I set to 15, so if I set the attack to 7.5, just going to check the decay time, pre-delay time, yeah. And then maybe yeah, for the release, maybe 30. And don't want the auto gain on, of course, because what's the point of sidechaining if you're then replacing the compression dip with auto gain and bring the ratio down to 2. Yeah, you can hear the kick a little bit better. But let's beef up this bass line and put a sub in actually in the end. So copy the MIDI region down, bring it down an octave, add in, let's add in an ES1 in mono, and go for one of the patches in there. Maybe not that one. Filter down, res off. I'm going to stack track the two of them together, the bass and the sub bass, and make them into a bass sub mix. And then I'm going to copy the compressor over. It was acting as a sidechain onto the group, so it's acting on the sub bass as well. EQ at the very, very low end of the sub, and also a high pass on the top end. You don't get phase cancellation between the sub bass and the upper bass. I'm going to bring the release and sustain down a tiny bit, and the decay maybe. Put a bit of glide on, why not? So the long notes are gliding into each other. Now you're hearing the tail end of the sub bass at the end, which I quite like. And now I'm going to add another compressor to kind of glue them together a little bit. I'm going to put auto gain on here, slow attack and a quick release. The auto gain means I can then A/B between the different compressor types quite quickly. Pick one that I like. I find that this Studio Fat works really well with bassline, so I'm going to try that. Bit of distortion on. A short release time is really bringing out the tail of the bass note. That one there. Proper gain staging in a moment. And the sub bass down a bit. And the top bass as well. Okay, should we have a look at that little Astaby bleep thing again? Yeah, I'm going to bring that note down to the E flat. In fact, I'm going to get rid of it altogether. I'm going to try an arpeggiated part here. Again, I'm looking to fill that gap between the bass line. Not bad. A different patch. Better. Put the echo back on. Just very quickly put a limiter on the master channel before I look into that properly at a later stage. Not bad. Volume down, so I can push that up, and we're not clipping now. Add a little EQ, roll off the low end, it's got a lot of it there. Add a little bit of reverb. Again, we're clipping, so let's bring the volume down. And plug in. I'm in meter fade, pre-fader metering mode in Logic. get rid of that now. That can be our reference track we'll use for arranging at a later point. We're going to copy the arrangement there in. Our drums at the top. Okay, not bad. I think we can build from here. We've got our basic building blocks. So yeah, in part 2 I'll develop this idea further, and part 3 I'll arrange it. I'll do a little bit of work on it until between now and the next tutorial. And yeah, great. Well, thank you for joining me. And as mentioned before, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, then you'll be able to download a copy of the Logic project at the very end. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier too, we're always on the lookout for good DJs on Brick Lane Radio. So if you want to hit me up with an email, fill out the contact form on East Recordings, and there we go. And that'll email me basically. All right, well, thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time.